Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
A big round of applause for Claudia. Now, moving to our next speaker, Camilla Wilson, social entrepreneur, facilitator, blogger, speaker, founder, artist, Sweden. She's from Sweden. Camilla, are you
Yes,
available?
here I am. Yes,
Hi,
I am
how are you?
available. I am very fine. Let me see if I can do this share screen. And there is the presentation. I share it.
Yeah, perfect. We can see your slides.
You
Yeah.
can see it.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
And I can
a
see
little
you.
brief introduction regarding you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Camilla is a Swedish and has worked as a social entrepreneur since 2005 when she co-founded P People, which lead her to travel the world. In 2012, she identified yet another problem that affects women and girls, and in 2015, founded the Cup Foundation. Since then, the organization has reached 30,000 youths in Kenya. Camilla performs trainer-to-trainer workshop following her comprehensive methodology called Rafiki, that is presented in a manual that has been implemented in Ivory Coast, South Sudan, Tanzania, Gambia, and Kenya. Before becoming a social entrepreneur, Camilla worked as a photographer, curator, and was teaching architecture at the university in Stockholm. Now, stage is all yours, Camilla. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. You were actually starting my presentation already. So I am presenting a short presentation about the Rafiki program. And I give you my regards from Mount Kenya. I am actually living on the slopes of Mount Kenya. So this is in a city that's called Nanyuki. And we are like, I want to just say we are in another setup, and I will present that because I have, first of all, I have listened to the two previous presentations and I have enjoyed them very much. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you also for the presentations. I will try to catch up with the other ones if we can afterwards, but having a very close relative who is actually in chronic fatigue disorder situation, both those presentations have been very supportive, actually. But this is another situation. We are in Kenya, and right now it's almost 9:30, so it's probably the latest presentation I ever done in my career. But I'm looking forward to talking to you all, and thank you for listening. So yes, I studied architecture, and I worked as a photographer, artist, and curator. And then my life turned upside down, and that was when I turned 40. The father of my two children, I have two daughters who are 19 and 21, he invented a solution to one of the world's biggest problems. So that is, and he asked me if I could bring this solution forward in the world, which I did. And that is when I turned into a social entrepreneur. So a social entrepreneur is someone who has identified a gap and found a solution to a social problem, and that does good. And I can say that being a social entrepreneur is something that is it's like you've been given a gift, but it's also heavy because it's not like, this is not my where I train. I have I'm not, this is not my, I would never have thought I ended up in this situation, but it's hard to say no when you get something like this solution in your hand that is actually a real solution, as I said, to one of the world's biggest problems, which is lack of sanitation. 3.2 billion people in the world do not have a toilet to go to, which means that there are diseases. Of course, children die of diarrhea under 5, like 1 every 12 seconds. Just the situation for women not having a toilet is like, we can go to India and we can say, I mean, many have been to India and you get surprised that people sit and maybe defecate in the open, but it's not strange if you do not have a toilet. But what do women do? We never see a woman. So anyway, I took charge of this. I started working with this in 2005, 2008. I worked full time and I went to Haiti on the earthquake. I traveled actually all over the world. I went to many conferences and then I was also, it became like a very big hype around this solution, this sanitation solution. And that actually, let me just introduce it shortly. This presentation is not about this, but it's a single-use toilet that's self-sanitizing. It has urea inside of it. So single-use meaning that you can use it like every time it's clean. And then in only 2 to 2 weeks, all the pathogens, all the virus, everything, cholera is like gone in 2 days. And when you close it after use, if now everything due to the ammonia is, all the pathogens are inactivated, then it's actually safe to use as a fertilizer. And the hype around this was, of course, because this was now a social entrepreneurship, I mean, a social solution, a solution to something that, I am a bit tired, it's too late, but it's a real solution to a social problem. And it also has an economical benefit. And that is why we got an article in New York Times. And if you get an article in New York Times, that means actually that you are known all over the world. And I've been interviewed on the BBC, Al Jazeera, China TV, I mean, all over. And it was when I was interviewed by a journalist after a couple of years working in a slum in Nairobi, one of the biggest slums that's called Kibera, that I was introduced to another problem, which led me into this product, what I'm going to present. And that's when I founded the CUP Foundation. This journalist had identified that 30 to 50% of girls between the ages of 9 to 18 are having sex for sanitary pads. And when she told me that, I said, like, it can't be true. I mean, I'm working here in these informal settlements since many years now, and I never heard about it. And I run to all these conferences, and wash, sanitation and menstruation is like part of the same thing. And I never hear anyone speak about it, because if there's something that happens at conferences is that we talk about the problems. Solutions are hard to find, but we talk about the problems. But this problem I had never heard about, and I tried to read about it. And then I asked my team, who were all from the informal settlement, this shanty town that's called Kibera, and they said it's life. And I said, excuse me, girls having sex for sanitary pads is life? And then that was like the moment when I said, I have to do something, I have to create awareness. And then I knew there was a solution, actually a very simple solution that is sustainable, which is the menstrual cup. So I said, like, okay, I need to create awareness around it, and let's give the girls a menstrual cup. This is like an emergency. So what they say about girls having menstruation and not having sanitary pads is that they lack days of school every month. But now this is so much worse, because we're talking about girls having sex at that young age. Are they having safe sex? Probably not. So they fall pregnant, get HIV. If you fall pregnant at this kind of age, where we are talking, it's quite dangerous to give birth before 15. Even 18, our bodies are not prepared to have a baby before 18, mentally, emotionally, physically, and everything. We are not made to give birth before 18. So, so the menstrual cup is, for me, the you know, you just throw them out. You teach the girls how to use it. If they need it, they will pick it up. And just to give you like, and this is important also, it's actually not a prostitution. It's called transactional sex, that you exchange for something, sex for something. So it's not, they don't call this a prostitution. So I have trained since 2015, when I started the CUP Foundation, 20,000 girls. But I don't only train the girls, I also make sure that the boys are included. That came to me quite fast. It's like, you can't only train the girls and lock them inside the room, and why are they not having any solution? Because no one talks to them about it, or they don't have money. And then we are actually underlining it if we have programs that are only reaching girls, because then the girls is like, yeah, this is super secret. We close the door and we talk about this menstruation in this room. But not only did I understand that we have to include boys, I also was thinking quite fast, after having worked in the slum for so many years, it's not the only problem these girls have, is it? Now, if they're having sex with sanitary pads, what are the chances that there's some girl in that classroom that is pregnant or has been raped? Or, I mean, I just heard that in Sweden, there's like every fourth girl, or I mean, there's a high amount of people who go through incest. In these circumstances, even more. Infections. If you have sex for a sanitary pad, will you not be using that pad very long, because it is very valuable? Yes, so that means infections, and then you can't go to your mom, and there's so many other problems. And I was thinking, I cannot, like, I get my trainers, they come in and train, we're going to give the out the cup, but I cannot only talk about menstrual pain and how the period, like what it is, when there's a girl maybe contemplating doing an abortion. And the way the girls do abortions in this situation, if they have no one to talk to, is actually 50 painkillers, drinking detergent, which actually I trained a trainer in Gambia, and she admitted that she fell pregnant at 14, and she actually drank detergent to try to get rid of the baby. And luckily she didn't die. The baby was born, the baby didn't disappear, but we concluded that probably the detergent was diluted. That's why she survived, because otherwise it's impossible to survive such a thing. So anyway, I realized that I cannot do a program that is only focusing on menstruation. It has to be holistic, because it's not that many organizations that come in and talk to these girls. So that is why I have developed this methodology that I call Rafiki, that is holistic in its approach. And this image here is actually, I was in Ivory Coast, so it's in French. So I have a manual in French also, but in English and Swahili. So just to, since we are in a whole different situation than you were talking about earlier, like we are in a real developing country. Actually, Kenya is supposed to be one of the more developed countries, but I studied in 2010. Okay, it's a long time ago, but still it hasn't changed much. It's 79% experience physical, sexual, or emotional violence before the age of 18. So many rapes and incest cases. HIV among young girls especially. 2,600 women die from unsafe abortions. They're hospitalized. I mean, it's happening just too much, too often. It's just, it's hard to live with knowing that this is happening. So an estimated 1/5 of Kenyan adolescents have begun childbearing, and 50% of the births in the previous 5 years were reported as being unplanned. There's other figures that say girls between 15 to 24, 38% are unwanted pregnancy, and no way of having a safe abortion because it's illegal. They don't use contraceptive methods. And of course, there's lots of abuse, lots of human rights violations. So we are in this situation in Kenya, but as I was saying, I've been in many other countries. And what I do as one of the first, like with my trainers that I'm training, after my methodology, is that we write down everything that are problems. I ask them to write what are the problems of the girls and what are the problems of the boys, adolescent boys. And we write down all the list, and then I just like put them apart, and then we like try to figure out like what are the root causes. And to be honest, sadly, it's almost always the same. And that is also being a bit of an outsider. That is what you are when as a social entrepreneur, is like you think you have to do this because no one else is doing it. And most organizations are implementing like an HIV program 2 weeks, or a menstruation program, but I believe that, as I am saying, that we have to look at it as a holistic, a comprehensive approach to really, since the problems are almost the same everywhere that I go in these developing countries. So what I do when I do this workshop where we write down all the problems, which is now, yes, teenage pregnancy, rape, all these things, is that the root causes are, of course, poverty. Poverty is one of the root causes where this is happening due to the fact that they're living in, and they lack a supportive environment. And this is actually one of the key things actually that I will come to, and they are and feel alone. And this is something that is not only here. I think that adolescents can feel alone when they grow up, but in these environments we have parents who are chasing food to put on the table to eat every day. So they can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Since they can't afford to pay for the bus, they walk like 2.5 hours to work, and they work all day, and they walk back, and they arrive, like they walk out of home before the kids have even woken up, and they come home when the kids are about to go to bed. So what happens in between? And there was one time I was with my 2 daughters in an informal settlement here in Nairobi, and I was standing in front of I was sitting in front with my daughter, who was at that point 9 years old, and the woman across my table, she was saying, our children never get that care. She was like inside of me because she felt so uncomfortable being in the informal settlements. There are not many children who come to informal settlements. White, I meant white children. So they were like superstars, and they got so much attention. She felt very uncomfortable. And then I realized, and what she was telling me is that they don't get that. I mean, love is, in other words, care, right? And they don't get that feeling of love that we are like, we are so used to. It's like impossible to think that like parents really aren't there unless you are in an abusive, like you have parents that are drug addicts in our world. But it's very unusual to find yourself this alone as these kids. You can actually go in an informal settlement, you can see a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old go and lock hands, and there's no adult around. And then, of course, there is the taboo. That is like one of the key things here, the taboo, which, of course, all of these things, the lack of support and the taboo, you get results in the lack of education. But interestingly, this lack of information is not only happening in Kenya or in Gambia or South Sudan or in these places. It's actually even happening in this situation in Sweden. I met these wonderful young girls, they're called SNAF, which is the sexual knowledge you never got. And they say that they actually are doing exactly more or less what I'm doing. They're saying we should have more information, we should have someone to talk to, we need more support, and there's so much bullying, there's abuse, there's this pornography problem, there's so many things that actually are happening to adolescents, and it's not that easy to call a support. Like if you have, perhaps you have one breast that's bigger than the other, where do you call? How do you get information? You feel alone as you are a teenager. And I remember there was once I had a journalist who came, and I'm usually never in the classroom because I disrupt by being white, but this time I was there was a journalist, and we were in this Kibera slum, and the question was, what happens when you go through puberty? And there was a girl who said, that's when we become shy. And I was like, yeah, you can see a 10-year-old girl, and she's like super strong, and she's like, and then something happens and here the girls who are not empowered and supported, they are so shy that they are like prey. Anyone can do anything because they are so unsupported and protected. And this, of course, is a very negative cycle. And it's interesting here with the SNAP, when I spoke to these girls in Sweden who started this organization that you need to reach out more to the adolescents with support, they were saying that there are girls actually that even think that if you have had, like the first time you have sex, you're a virgin, after that, your vagina is expanded, like big. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening in Sweden. This is exactly what they told me in South Sudan. Women who I had to fly helicopter to, who didn't know how to read and write. So there's girls in Sweden who think the same as people who live out in total nowhere in South Sudan. So there is a need to do something. Adolescents need more support in this world, to be honest, not only here. So the WHO says that adolescence is a period in life with specific health and development rights and needs. And they also say that they have the right to, adolescents have the right to information and skills. And this is what we've been talking about. They lack information. They have the right to safe and supportive environments. And they have a right to appropriate and accessible health and counseling services. So why is this not happening? Why are the children not getting this information? I think they're children when they're still 13, 14. I think that's one of the problems, is that they are still children and they're not looked upon children. They're like in the between, and they become like in between the chairs. I think we shouldn't blame anyone, rather see why isn't it happening. It's like in Sweden, we are right now implementing comprehensive sexuality education is supposed to happen in between all the teachers at high school and primary school and high school. It's supposed to be the math teachers should include sexual education. It should be the history teacher. It should be everyone in every subject should talk about sex education. But it's it's just like, it will never work. It's not their subject. It's a taboo subject. It's something that is hard to talk about. Parents, I mean, it's not natural to talk to your mom and your father. I mean, you can have a great like relationship with your mother or father, but it's very hard to have a relationship where you like, yeah, I had sex yesterday and I'm wondering about why did this happen, or like, you don't talk. I don't want to know what my parents do or did, rather. My father's passed away, but or I don't want to know, they don't, yeah, I don't want to think about my daughter having sex either. It's not, it's a generation gap. So this is what I have come to a conclusion is the best way to go forward, is to have young adults who can be there. They can give information to prevent that things happen. They can be there and support, and they can respond when it's needed. So a Rafiki is a friend, and Rafiki means in Swahili friend. So the Rafiki program is, and this is what I have been using actually all the time. My whole program has been based on having young men and women who are between 20 and 30 years old, who are so-called peers, meaning they have the same background as the girls and boys that they train, meaning that they feel they trust them, they feel comfortable to talk to me. It's like a big sister, but it's also a role model. And my concept, which I have not implemented, but is what I am suggesting with the Rafiki program, is that these Rafikis would be educated in following my trainer to trainer is like in peer counseling, comprehensive sexuality education, human rights, gender equality, I mean, everything that they need. And then that they are like a health practitioner. They are like if it's in Sweden, you put the Rafiki at the nurse's office. We in Sweden, we have a nurse office in the school, and the nurse comes every like once a week or twice a week. You can have the Rafikis who are based in the school. They are independent. Or if we are in Kenya, these Rafikis can be based in the health clinic that is close by, and then they reach out to the schools, and then they come and they visit the boys and the girls, and they can be sitting always in the corner on Wednesday afternoon or something. So they have a young adult that they trust, they feel comfortable to talk to, who is always there. And if now there's a girl who is pregnant, she will, I mean, at least there will be a bigger possibility that she will be able to go and talk to her and say, I need to get to a doctor, or I have an infection, or I'm being bullied, or which happens, my father is having sex with me, or my brother, or my cousin, or something. They can have someone they can talk to always as they grow up with any questions. And one of my methodologies, and actually what I think is really working well, is that I ask them to write anonymous questions. The boys are never shy to talk about these things. They are like, they ask any question, but the girls are super shy. And I have collected thousands of questions, these anonymous questions. And many of them are actually around this subject, about why, like pregnancy. So this is one, for example, written now between, is anonymous, so I don't know the age, but between 11, say, to 16. Why do people use condoms? I am asking, can I die when I get my monthly period? I'm afraid to start. And this is a bit on the abortion thing. What type of chemical is used to kill an unwanted baby and its effects? And this is a sad one. If you rape when you're a child of age 3, can you get pregnant? It's like they are like heartbreaking. And then there was the one that it was actually only after 2. We had only trained like 100 girls or something, and there was one of these anonymous questions that made me understand that the incest is such a. It's like, my father is having sex with me. I have no one to talk to. Please help me. And we never reached that girl. And incest is the hardest ones. You need a shelter. You need a way out because they are so dependent on, of course, the father and the mother. Money. It's very hard to get the girl out of such a situation. But if you have someone there who's always there, it can make a difference. So the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child states that governments are obliged to ensure that children develop to their full potential by ensuring adolescents' needs and rights are met. So I propose this as a standalone program, independent from schools. It's not the teachers who are supposed to be responsible for giving adolescents their knowledge and the support they need. This is just to give you an idea of what in Kenya. I was actually asked by someone at the UN High Commission to write a national program, which I did, but then he moved, so now it's in someone's drawer. But I investigated all the programs that the government in Kenya is putting in place for adolescents. And even if all these programs are there, and there is, for example, in the Kibera slum where I've been working, one NGO on every 10 person living there, which is now, there is 400,000 people living, or 500,000 people living in that slum that is the size of Central Park in New York. It's just mind-blowing how many programs, how many NGOs are working, how much is being done. And still the girls are suffering. So what I propose in this national concept note is, together with a couple of professors who gave me their support and input, is that that if the government could take a lead, and just like we hire nurses, we hire these Rafikis and they are placed in health clinics, and then all these programs, the guidelines for, bring them to health clinic, national plan of everything, the sexual, everything can just be inserted inside this program with Rafikis. And then you can streamline everything, and you can even let the NGOs come, so it becomes more efficient. I've been working in this slum with so many other organizations running beside me, and I don't even know, we are like even going to the same schools, like one after another, and given other menstrual solutions the same. It's just, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying, it's just very difficult to coordinate this situation. And I think with such a program, you can streamline everything so much better and have so much better results. So that was a short presentation. Now it's 10:05. So it's getting I'm an early bird, so it's past my bedtime, not really, but almost. But as I said, let's support our children holistically, and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, my organization is thecup.org, and I am available on Instagram and everything. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Camilla. That was a wonderful presentation from your side, and we are very much honored to have you on the stage. And I guess there are a few questions from the audience. Wait a second. Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah, the first question is, what is your biggest challenge on being a social entrepreneur?
Being a social entrepreneur is like it's like an adventure, actually, because you can't really plan, because you never know what is going to happen. It's like you network and you move and you but it's always and will always be finding funding, finding people who care. To be honest, you feel like you're a bit of a warrior. You kind of like, seriously, there's girls dying right now. Like, let's do something, let's do something. Or like, I brought together I did a CAP summit with the other organizations who are working with CAPs around Africa, and I said, let's always reach the boys also. Let's not only reach the girls. And you're like all the time trying to move, and so money and creating awareness. And actually, even if you get funding for one organization, they will always want, a new thing for the next time. So it's like this continuous funding. Especially for people with a sanitation solution, we reach 10,000 people daily in Kibera slum, but then it's like, yes, we subsidize water in Sweden, and medicine and milk, but when you do these projects, you're not really interested in supporting a project for year after year after year, subsidized. You do a one, and then you count off, and then you write in your annual report. So it's yeah, that's, I think, is the biggest challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderfully answered. And thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, Emilia. Wish you all the very best for your future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Now, that's all for the day. This has been a wonderful experience with virtual conference. I hope we have all enjoyed listening to the talks from like-minded professionals across the globe. Today, with your excellent support, it reminds for me to thank the organizer Star Icon Conferences once again for giving this opportunity to close this excellent conference, and I hope that you have all found it a fruitful event. Last but not the least, I would like to thank each attendee who spoke or performed in this wonderful event. All of you taking time out of your busy schedules means the world to us. And if any of you ever needs any help related to the conference or any suggestions, are welcome through email, call, or WhatsApp. Thanks a million for your great